Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I'm going to be talking about Unbelievable Episode 5. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. So, we're deep into the case now, and we visit, or at least Grace visits the victim that we have discovered, or the victim who got away, the one who jumped out the window, whose name is Lily, and questions her. And we find out that she's a bit of a character. She's a very, very interesting person, comparatively speaking to some of the others, in that she's a bit of a kook. She's a bit of a, the new age spiritual, because we kind of heard this about her being a druid last episode, but there's a lot more to this. Like, she insisted on doing a hypnosis session where she took control and said she'd be her own medium, and just weird things like that. And you can sort of tell because whilst Grace is talking to her, Karen goes to the detective who worked the case, and he sounds very tired about the whole affair. He's very deflated, and he regrets certain things that he handled with the case, with the way he kind of, the trust broke down between them because of the way he questioned that she maybe hallucinated things because of the kava kava, I believe the tea was called, that she was drinking that night. And he might not have done that after he had foot and handprints, which obviously lights up Karen's eyes because you have foot and handprints, which leads to some other stuff in the episode. But yeah, again, a lot of this show, in terms of the interest, is the characters and their struggle, not just with the actual details of the case. It's not just about, I mean, the raw detective stuff's pretty enjoyable, just in the sense of like solving the case. But what the show is really about is the actual kind of personal involvement and their drive to solve it, and the walls they hit in terms of the system, in terms of, there's a lot of it in this episode where Grace especially feels frustrated that the FBI agent, let me just get his name, Agent Taggart, that he's not as passionate as he should be, that he doesn't have the fire in his eyes. He's doing what he's supposed to, he's treating it seriously, but he doesn't quite have the absolute rage, the anger that he should, that this is happening. And it's kind of something that, I feel like we're kind of examining in a lot of these scenes where it is Karen and this detective. Like, how is he, what is his demeanor, what is his attitude when talking about this case, compare it to Parker in the first episode with Marie, or compare it to the other detectives we see in this episode. Like, it's one thing that I'm finding myself very consciously looking at in every scene. Whether or not I get anything super meaningful out of it, I think it's really showing that there's a range, there's a clear range, and some of them aren't a million miles away from another, but some of them are a lot different from other examples. And this guy doesn't seem like the worst guy in the world, this detective, but there's certainly some attitude things here that kind of creep in a little bit. So and we find out that Grace, or sorry, that this Lily got a sketch done, because the police didn't want to do it because they didn't think there was a point, because he was wearing a balaclava, he was wearing a mask. And this leads to actually probably the big funny scene in the episode, because this show is actually doing quite well of having a little bit of levity here or there. There's the odd little moment. In fact, even the character of Lily herself, despite the fact that she's one of the victims, is actually, her entire character is a little bit over the top, and because of that, does offer a little bit of humor sort of sprinkled in throughout, with the way she's talking, with the reactions of the others to her, including Grace, just kind of being like, this okay, this woman's a character, this woman's kind of a bit cuckoo. And it's interesting for them to take that tactic where, okay, we've had a few victims thus far, and we've treated them very seriously, but it's the example here that this person in particular just is a little bit weird, which doesn't change how seriously the case should be taken, doesn't change what happened to her or what almost happened to her, but it does say, hey, she is a bit weird, and we can comment on the fact that she's a bit weird. But at least a big funny moment where they're exchanging information. The other girl's looking for, Mia's looking for the handprints and the footprints, and looking for the matches, and she's going to go and find the shoes and the gloves that the guy's using. And Grace just casually drops that there's a sketch, and Karen gets very upset and like goes on a bit of a rant saying, no, she should be respected as an equal partner, and you should give me all the information that you have. And you know where this is going, because she's walking into the room of the pin board, and she puts it up and she unrolls the sketch, and you kind of know what the joke's going to be, that there's nothing in the sketch, and this is why she didn't bother telling her, because it's useless. So there's that funny moment where Karen looks at it for the first time and goes, oh, That's not very helpful, because it is just it's just the eyes and then the balaclava. There's nothing to gain from it. So, but no, it's a funny little beat. It's a funny little beat. And like, I appreciate that the show can put in the humor like that, and it doesn't feel out of place. There's another little scene later on actually with the intern who gets an idea when Karen's sent off to Kansas. The intern's working with the others, and he gets a little idea. He's like, hey, he's got this other trait. He always steals things, always steals underwear. What if he stole underwear without the assault before? Maybe we could track, those cases. And they all kind of laugh at him and kind of make it clear that, yeah, I mean, underwear going missing is not that uncommon, but like sometimes it's not because it was stolen, it's just because you assume that it was, caught somewhere, or if it was stolen, even if you're sure it was stolen, if it seemed like a one-off incident, you probably aren't going to report it. It's not something you phone the police about, is that one item of clothing is went awry. And he feels a bit silly, but they kind of admit, look, you know what, some sillier hunches have led to things, look it up. And they also give him some credit and say, he's right, though, that maybe not about that specific detail, but the idea that some of his other actions are serial in nature, like he keeps doing the same thing, so maybe he does some of them without the full crime. Maybe he does the stalking aspect, maybe he does this, some of the other aspects, like... So that leads to looking into suspicious vehicles and the radius of each crime and whatnot. So Karen gets sent off to Kansas, and that happens because they find a potential. They've got Taggart in, and they're all working together, and they find a potential match. This serial abuser who was in Kansas and was at sort of a college town and was consistently attacking people. Over like an 8-year period or something like that. They said it was like 6 to 8 years, and it matches the MO. And again, it's another funny little moment where someone has to go to Kansas and they all start putting their fingers on their noses, and Karen's not really paying attention, and they all kind of slowly, one by one, put their fingers on their noses, and Karen looks up and then goes, "Wait, what's happening? Why are you all doing this?" And she does it, and she's like, "What are you all doing?" And yeah, so. It's actually kind of funny to me that she's never heard of I don't even know what you call it, the finger on the nose. I'm not doing that, Dibsy. But, of course, the real interest is, obviously that's interesting in terms of, we're getting close to a potential, suspect. But as is the shoes and the gloves coming in, and, Mia's found it matches. She's found, and she's going to look into, like, the records of every, item of these sold since their inception. Cool. But the real interesting stuff in this scene is that the intern, because he makes up for it a little bit with some of his good ideas later, but he does put his foot in his mouth a little bit here by mentioning the prospect of looking for cops as suspects in the scene in front of Taggart, where he says, "You want me to file these, separately for cops, for law enforcement?" And it's this really awkward silent moment where Taggart's kind of like trying to ask, "Hey, why are you looking down that avenue? Is that something you think's possible? Why is that? What would the evidence?" And Grace explains why after some awkward silence. Okay, have to come clean now. Have to talk about what one of our ideas is. And Taggart offers some reasons why it might not be a cop. That he sees why they're suggesting that. But TV shows, he specifically name drops CSI as a TV show, but he name drops TV shows as a way of saying, hey, a lot of people watching a lot of this TV stuff actually have a reasonable idea of what to avoid. Yeah, not that those shows are entirely accurate all the time, but the general ideas of what they're looking for isn't necessarily untrue, and this might actually give someone the information. And this is actually kind of followed up on a little bit when we get to Kansas, which I'll bring up. But, and yeah, it just, this is, it's possible that this is the case, and that the whole idea of like going from county to county could also be something that someone in the public could figure out. Someone smart enough could do it. Of course, the argument way back when the idea was first posed was that criminals tend not to be that smart, and that's why they kind of leaned into the cop angle. But he's making valid enough points. But Grace gets really upset that he's kind of arguing against this and leaves the room. And Karen goes to speak to her, and we get like a good bit of character with these two here, where Karen kind of like has to talk Grace into the idea, like, hey, Taggart's a good guy, and he's going out on the limb here. He's trying his best, and he's here working through the files with us. Like he's going the distance with this. He seems, he cares. And Grace says, yeah, but where's the fire? Where's the anger that this is happening? Would he be acting this calm and collected about how he handles it if men were equally as attacked? If like, and and she gets really funny, but talking, saying, uh, she phrases it in a very kind of like in your face way. She talks about his ass and things like that, and it's all kind of like this. And eventually, she says this whole situation's effed and this and that, and she brings up how many men who have beat, how many police officers who have beat their wives who are still on the job. That are still in Florida specifically. Florida, always a great example to whip out when you want a nice negative statistic. Not that anywhere else doesn't have negative statistics, but Florida is guaranteed to have them. Florida man and Florida women are all over the news. What can I say? But Karen's like, hey, yeah, but you being out here and feeling this way isn't going to help it get uneffed, right? And the idea that there's no one person to blame, that it's a systematic problem that we have to kind of like work through it and try to unscrew it kind of over time. We have to actually get to work, so let's go and un-F it. And then, again, it's a little bonding moment because Grace is like, hey, you said the F word. Yeah, it only took a little bit of pushing to get the church-going Goody Two-Shows to drop an F-bomb. And then Karen says F you. So, and we see her go to church, actually. There's a scene where Karen goes to church and she runs into Amber, who we find out's had a couple of casual flings with guys she met at the gun range because she's bought a gun. And she's terrified that her boyfriend might find out, or even her friends will find out that this is not who she is. And Karen tries to talk to her, and again, it's the idea that everyone is affected differently. I think beyond just seeing like how she's acting out here, and obviously coming to church again, something she said she's not done since she moved away from home. She it's going more contrast again, showing more contrast rather with Marie. Which we'll get back to. We'll get back to her in a minute. But in terms of the rest of the case stuff for the episode, Karen goes to Kansas, and the detective here who was on this case, kind of has some of that anger that Grace was looking for before. He seems very affected by the fact that he never caught this guy, and he's like, oh, I hope you get the asshole and things like that, and he looks kind of angry. And he's like, hey, I was a rookie back then. I just made detective. Maybe if I was the detective I am now, maybe I'd have caught him. He really beats himself up about it, and it's kind of what Grace was looking for. So again, it's this idea of ranges of people handling things. The idea that, Taggart, just because he doesn't seem angry doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't care in the same way. He's just processing it differently, perhaps. But one of the interesting things comes out here, outside of the fact that this cop was really, really cared about the case and kept really rigorous details, is that there's a book in the file it's a textbook about rape forensics. And he says that they basically found out that some men will get this off the internet and use it as a way to know what to avoid. And this kind of ties into the Taggart's thing about the CSI shows, right? And all the various cop shows, is that someone might have learned to do this. And and Karen rightly points out that this might not even be the same suspect. These might be two different people who are just reading the same book. Obviously, there's some other similarities that maybe suggest it is the same person, but it does beg the question: hey, could there be a few people who have gotten this off the dark web and are using it to avoid detection? So, really paints this idea that the problem, again, is obviously we already knew the problem was big, in terms of sexual assault, but this is like, hey, this case we thought was just one person. I mean, it isn't, I think, in the sense of the main cases they're looking at. But it's just another little sort of seed that says, hey, this is a bigger problem. Even if this guy turns out to be the same one, this is a way that it's festering in the background. It's creating more abusers. It's creating more rapists. It kind of scares you a little bit thinking about the spread of this information and how it's been accessed and how it's been used and so on and so on. So... yeah, she also has an interesting moment at a diner where this old man is kind of creepily staring at her for a long time. And then when these sort of younger women come in to get their order, their food, he's staring at them, he's glaring at them up and down the whole time. And Karen just makes a very clear point of flashing her badge and gun as she pays for her meal. And the guy just kind of, starts minding his own business, gets kind of nervous. And when she's walking past him, she just kind of, glares down at him. And I thought she might say something to him. She never did. But, I think it's a very clear scene in the sense that it's her kind of just, this guy might not have ever actually hurt anyone. He might just be a creep. He might just be a bit of a pervert. That's all he might be. But it's the sort of idea here where she gets to stare one down a little bit and scare someone out of not acting on anything. You know, whether or not he was is entirely open for debate. But I think it's this idea again. It's kind of what she was talking to Amber about, where Amber is trying to feel safe again. That's why she's bought a gun. She's trying to feel like she's in control again. And I think this is, in the scene, Karen making it very clear to this person, this man, that she is in control, and that, you know, I think that's what the scene is, in a very kind of, enforcing way. So, no, really solid. And then, you know, Grace once again tries to talk into her husband about getting some files, some personnel files. One in particular, because she actually narrows down to one kind of suspicious cop who's been transferred around, has a bit of a dodgy history, fits the description, and she wants the file, and he's adamant that he can't give her this. Her asking for it is not a justifiable reason for him to break protocol, and he's right. He's right, and she's trying desperately to make him, give it out. And I think this is an interesting scene because Karen does pull a bit of a low blow where she says that the next time he rapes someone, it's on your head, and he says, "No, it's not." And he's right. It's not. This is not on him. These rules are not on him. He's just following procedure. But again, it shows her desperation, and of course, it makes her get inventive. It makes her get inventive because the episode ends, of course, with her after being on the shooting range herself, regaining some control. If that's a symbol in this episode for regaining control, it's nice that it comes back into the episode via Gracie's plot. We see Amber talk about it. We see Karen then kind of regain control herself, which does involve showing her gun, is worth mentioning. And then here, after she's at the shooting range, she gets the idea to regain control by circumventing and maybe, doing something a little bit less official and a little bit sneakier, as it were. So she actually calls up the precinct and says she's putting a baseball, like a softball team, a police softball team, and she wants to get some phone numbers from some guys. And the episode ends with her getting this guy's phone number, this cop that she's kind of targeted. So yeah, so really, really big stuff in the case. Really entertaining, like breadcrumbs and details, but a lot of good beats in there with the two characters trying to handle the emotion of it. Grace getting kind of angry and frustrated that she feels that no one else is happy enough or angry enough. And there's that nice beat as well where she says that she's not the sort of cop who gets excited by every nice new bit of evidence. It's like, oh, we've got a lead or we've got something else that's good news. It's like, no, she'll only be happy once it's over, once they've actually caught the suspect. Everything before that isn't worth being excited about. Whereas, Karen's more hopeful and wants to be excited about all these various beats, all these various steps along the way. So, and then Marie's story, welcome to the soul-destroying portion of your episode once again, because we see, obviously, there's a subplot within Marie's side of the story with Colleen and the other foster mother, which is very important here because it kind of, you feel like it's almost going to get something going somewhere, and it can't because we know that there's no one talking about it in the future part of the show, but Colleen's talking to her foster mother and shows her the news report and says, hey, what if it actually is true? What if the way we think she's dealing with it weirdly is just the way she deals with it? She's just different from us. And it's funny because the other foster mother is the one who kind of got the doubt in the detective's head back in episode 1, and she's the one who says, what, so if we get her involved in this, and it's almost like she's saying that even if it's true, getting her involved in this is going to put her through more bureaucracy, and that's going to be bad for her. So that's maybe if the lawyer can get her a deal and that'll get her out of this mess forever, that's the best thing for her. And Colleen's staring at her. She clearly does not agree. She's dead eye locked at the end of that scene. So she takes it upon herself to call this police department in the other town and tell her there's someone here who had a very similar story. And we see this cop, this detective, phone Parker from the first episode. We see Parker again, who we've not seen since, I think, episode 2, I think we saw him last. And Parker says, no, we have no victim. There might be a lot of similar details, but, we're actually, charging her with a false report. So, I don't know what to tell you. And he basically talks the other detective out of, pursuing it and asking questions about it. And it's a very frustrating scene. Because there's a moment afterwards where Parker hangs up the phone and he's got this kind of look in his face, like, something fishy about that. But he doesn't, he should have at least did the courtesy of going through the details on the off chance that it might help someone, and the off chance that it might stop more crimes, and the off chance that it might do something. So that's a very frustrating scene in this episode. Also frustrating is Marie going to work, and she's told that because our story is public now, that she can't be on the floor. She can't be on the shop floor where the public are coming in, the customers. So, and I was worried she was going to fire her right there on the spot, but she actually doesn't. She puts her in the back at the loading dock, away from the front. And I was like, okay, all right, that makes a lot of sense. It seems fair enough. And, she gets to keep her job. But the public sort of perception and the discomfort that might happen from having her out on the floor won't happen. So we come back later though, and we get a very uncomfortable scene with someone who works back there, this guy who kind of tries to flirt a little bit. He tries to sort of say, other girls are all dull back here, but you're quite, you're nice. Like, are you this cool outsider work too? Kind of implying that he wants to ask her out. And she gets very uncomfortable and says she has to go clock out. And he kind of steps in front of her and won't let her past. And just kind of like prods her with lines like, oh, do you think I'll do something? Like he's kind of like really goading her on. And the impression you get here, now he eventually says that he's just messing with her. And it's a horrible joke, first and foremost. Pretending that you're going to assault someone, like, hey, no, that's not funny in any context. But in this context especially, the idea here is that no one will believe her. That's the thought process. Before he said it was a joke, and I thought maybe he will try something. The thought process of someone like this is that, well, she's cried wolf, and she's discredited herself. Will anyone actually believe her if someone does something now? And it felt like that in the scene, and I felt very uncomfortable. And then afterwards, of course, like she's distraught, she leaves, and even when the ex-boyfriend shows up and tries to like be nice, he's brought her milkshake, whatever, she just yells at him, doesn't want to tell him anything, lets like one detail slip, and then just yells at him, says he's not been doing anything to help her, which doesn't seem fair. He says that it's not fair, and then he gets angry and leaves. And then our manager comes out and says she can't behave this way at work. And she just says, F it, I quit, and she rides off. And that's kind of the end of that story for the episode. But it's a very frustrating couple of scenes. Especially this last sort of extended scene where we're both in the back and then out in the front with the boyfriend. All of that stuff is once again very hard hitting, and it's frustrating because we're getting to a point now where Marie is acting out, and some of what she's doing and saying isn't something we can get behind in a purely co-logical sense. Like she's saying things to the boyfriend that aren't fair. She's reacting in ways that seem I don't know why I can't say cruel, but like are erratic, that they don't quite match with how she should be acting. But of course, given everything she's been through, given the I kept talking about the tangled web that she's in because of the bureaucracy from last episode, the cops and the charge. You get it. You get why, and it feels like she's kind of spiraling. It feels like she's spiraling, and you sympathize why, and you understand why, but you can see how she's alienating people around her, and how it's going to lead to nothing good, how it's just going to make her situation worse, and it's hard to watch as a result of that. So, episode 5, once again, very solid. Case is still going. The character stuff is as strong as ever, and directions are very good. And had a few laughs in this one as well, surprisingly, which is nice. Some human moments, just to sort of flesh it out and make it feel a bit more real. Because let's face it, real life is not dour all the time. We crack jokes, we do things to lift the tension occasionally, and the episode kind of got that balance quite well. So there you go. That's episode 5 of Unbelievable. I will see you guys next time for episode 6. You can let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. You can get me specifically on Twitter at Wibble89. You can also, of course, support everything we do by rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars. Of course, more so than that, you can go to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month and keep all the content coming and ensure that more happens in the future. And get some bonuses for your troubles. So yeah, $1 a month is what you can support us from, and every dollar is amazing. So go to have a look and see if you want any of that. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?